Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent uh-oh experiences in business.
Learn what their uh-oh cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again.
Hey, how you doing? Joe Caruso from New Hampshire.
Good afternoon, everybody. Or morning. Geez, morning. It feels like an afternoon already. My goodness.
And we started already. Good job.
So we
have. Great.
That's right. Or it could be evening. No one knows.
You could be listening at 3 a.m. because you're worried about your career.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
So Joe, we're excited. I know you know both Ben and I. We've had an opportunity. We've even visited with you up in the Boston area when we had an event up there. And so we wanted to just give everyone an opportunity to get to know you a little better. And it's something that we call connections before content. So tell us something about you that's not on your resume.
It's not on my resume. Yeah. So throughout high school and middle school as well, I was involved in a lot of theater programs, as well as I played the trombone for 10 plus years. So I still have the stand and the trombone down in the basement of my mom's house, which occasionally I threaten that I'm going to play for my kids. But yeah, I really enjoyed that piece of it. And again, similar idea. You're a little bit vulnerable when you're practicing and making a lot of noise, but always loved it. So that's one of the things I've enjoyed. And actually, my kids are already taking up music as well. So happy about that.
And this theater thing, like I had never heard about your theater, and all the time that you and I have talked over the past couple of years, like this is a new thing for me, Ben. I didn't even know about the theater thing. It's like, wow.
It goes to show you, even if you've been have a working relationship for years, until you actually intentionally ask questions to get to know somebody, to learn something, there's things that you can learn. And we've had clients that have worked together themselves for 20, 25 years. Yeah. And when you're intentional with your questions of truly wanting to get to know somebody, you can find, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And in the normal work environment, that's not going to come up unless you're intentional about it.
Yeah. So it's really good. I really like that.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's dive in then a little bit more about you. Of course, we're going to talk about your uh-oh experience, but we're not going to do that yet. So Ben's going to tee up a question for you.
So want to know a little bit of who you are as far as your identity. What are the character traits or behaviors that others would describe you as having, or that you aspire to be known as? So we want to know who you are. What is your identity? What are those things? And eventually it'll be about roles and hats you've worn and industries. But who are you as identity?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a father of three. Very fortunate to have 3 goofballs in my house, plus the animals and everything else. So I have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and we're coming up on birthday season. So all of them have their birthday over the next 60 days or so. I enjoy to laugh. I enjoy making connections with folks and having a good time, and really enjoy, similar to what we were just talking about, learning about people and finding out a little bit about their background and spending time with my friends and family. So I'm very fortunate. I have most of my family within about a 45-minute drive from here. So I get to spend a lot of time with those folks. And I would say that my hope is that folks would say that I've got a good sense of humor and kind-hearted and intentional about what I talk about. I really like to make sure that when we're involved, we're engaged and we're having good conversation. I think we're all guilty as charged as far as grabbing these a little too often and relying on those, but really trying to separate from that and spend time with folks.
For those of you just listening, he grabbed his cell phone and put it up to the screen. Yes, so you can, of course, catch our visual of this on our YouTube channel, for the Cohesion Culture YouTube channel, but here visually. One of the things I really appreciated about what you said was being intentional. And it's just recently I've been in a lot of coaching conversations to really focus on the difference between good intentions and having intentionality. So having good intentions is wishing sometimes for something to happen, and having intentionality is making things happen. So I really appreciated that you brought that into the conversation.
Good intentions are used to pave roads.
Yes, and we know where that may lead us.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you talk about a lot of things that you can think about doing, but at least for me too, I write down a lot of those things so that I make sure I actually physically check off what I'm doing to make sure that those things are happening. And whether it's on the personal side or the professional side, I find that certainly helps.
Yeah, it does. So what we'd like to do is just to kind of a framework a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, and
now some role. So what's your background industry wise, and that may tie into what your Uh-Oh as well. But now we're going to talk who you are, big R, roles you have, or industry or background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the automotive B2B space for about 15 years now, specifically on the wholesale side. So again, that's very much related to the business to business. I oversee partnerships from an enterprise level. So I communicate on a day-to-day basis with the leaders at other companies to make sure that we are meeting our expectations, as well as partnering with them on any new opportunities that are out there. So I've been doing that piece for a little over 3 years, and previous to that, different roles within the house. So some of it very tactical and operational at a physical location, and then other times it was a dotted line working with teams, building them up and training on some of the things that we'd worked on, as well as leading direct teams going into markets across the country to attack and bring in new business as well. So a little bit across the board. And again, really, as we talked about kind of before, I enjoy the conversation, enjoy spending time and learning and meeting new people. And that's really what I've been able to focus on over the last few years. So it's a lot of fun. It's certainly a new challenge, new opportunity every day. And it's a fun industry that a lot of folks don't even realize exists.
And Joe, in your role, would you consider yourself to be a leader of people, or are you just or are you the leader who helps facilitate conversations, move things along, move projects along?
Yeah, right now it's an individual contributor role. So that is leading the book of business that I have directly. I don't have any direct reports right now, although I have in the past.
Okay, got it. All right, so now it's for the fun time. So now we want to talk about your Uh-Oh experience. What was it that you would like to share with our group?
Yeah, so this just happened a couple of weeks ago, and within our business, we have what we call champion challenges. So this is where a customer of ours essentially puts us one against another and stacks us up against a competitor. And it can be tough. It can be certainly a learning experience, but this one was a challenge that unfortunately we lost. And one of the biggest things within this is you have both your internal and external stakeholders within these. So a big piece of that is communicating where the progress is, the in-between conversations that aren't necessarily on the piece of paper, and making sure that everyone's aware of that. And unfortunately, I received an inbound email from one of the internal stakeholders asking me how this happened. How did we lose? And I realized that I didn't communicate with them effectively. And it's kind of a two-part piece where I didn't realize I didn't communicate with them effectively. And then also how I reacted to reading that was not ideal. Thankfully, it was an after-hours email that I received, so I read it after hours, and my first reaction was honestly frustration. So I checked myself and said, I must have sent this. I must have communicated with them. And the more I looked back through it, I realized that I dropped the ball. So two-part there. didn't effectively communicate, and then I let my emotions get the best of me.
But now that although you got the emotions the best of you, and I appreciate you being authentic and sharing that, did you act on those emotions at that time, or because it was after hours, you were able just to kind of take a breath and redo?
Yeah, absolutely. I was lucky that I took a couple minutes and I talked through it out loud, and I said to myself, like, gosh, there's no way that I missed that. I'm on top of these things. And then I paused and I realized that is absolutely not how I would want to answer that question and how I would want to respond to that. So no, that did not get communicated externally. It was more of just that gut reaction of like, I'm passionate about this. I feel as though I've effectively communicated, but then realized that it was ultimately a miss on my part, that I didn't bring them into the fold as much as I should have. And it was one of those where you take a moment, realize that you gotta focus on everybody a little bit there. So it was thankfully I was able to reach out to them the following day. I didn't even put it into an email. I picked up the phone the next day and had a conversation.
Okay, that was really awesome. Love that. Okay, so now let's talk 10 to 3. So if you'd gotten that email from 10 to 3, what would have happened?
It may have not ended up the same way, even though it should have. I may have been quicker to send a note back and put it into writing, as opposed to taking a moment and picking up the phone and talking to them.
What do you think leads you to that discretion, as far as that you have to respond quickly in that environment during work hours?
Yeah, I think it's just the sense of urgency, and I pride myself on getting back to people as fast as I can. So I think sometimes you're so quick to jump into that scenario and share the feedback as quickly as you can that you don't always pause for a moment. And I think that goes for everybody. Like sometimes it doesn't hurt to take 2 to 3 extra breaths and think through what your what the scenario is before you dive back into it.
Is that an expectation the people that sent it to expected, that you would reply within a minute, or is that something you did internally?
Oh, absolutely internally. Again, that's something where the speed, I put that pressure on myself, and I think a lot of people do that. You expect that you're going to have to respond as quickly as possible and always have that exact answer right off the bat. And whether it's stats and numbers or a reply about shared information, like sometimes I think when you're in those situations, you really want to be the person and have the answer all the time.
And that's just really pressure that you put on yourself. So clearly, this is something that you could really safeguard against. And I think it's really important for people listening to really pause for a moment and really understand that what you're trading off. So your quick return of information, thinking that is the standard or the level of service that you want to provide. But if you're providing a response that may not necessarily be the most effective for the situation or the issue, then you have to rethink and reevaluate your priorities as to, is it really a thoughtful response that's done within a reasonable point of time? Is that really the goal of what I want to shoot for? Or do I just want to respond quickly in the moment? And I really feel that's something that we need to think a little bit more about. And part of the problem is the technology today makes us able to respond so instantaneously. And, I love technology, so this is not a diss at all on technology. But I think what it is that we've conditioned ourselves to this sensory sort of like immediacy of response and immediacy of getting information, and not realizing that if we were conducting business 10 years ago, we would have been able to have paused because we didn't have some of this opportunity to respond as quickly. And so maybe we would have been better back then than we are today.
Well, in many ways, but to me, there's more questions. We're going to have to unpack this on cost to you and everything. But to me, the biggest piece of this is get and talk about, there's only 2 things that we individually can control: our attitude towards anything, and then our actions. and reactions is an action.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've talked before with other guests about self-discovery and taking the time. And so you're showcasing that you made the mistake, and that, but the best lesson that may have come from this is what you learned in the response and from yourself, is that you got to evaluate the situation and what you can do differently, and we'll dive into that. But also the taking the time, pausing. And here's where I don't know that I'm wired this way or it's been a training, but I don't feel that I owe people responses, and I've been able, somewhat overcoming that technological piece, and I will reply 24, 48, 72 hours, just when it's convenient or whatever. And we even have, we get reviews a lot. And just recently we got a review, and normally they're responded by managers, but if it's a certain level or below, I reply. And everybody wanted this reply to come out. We didn't reply for 5 days because we wanted to say we wanted to have every word matter on what we said. And that was very frustrating for some people on our team, that we needed to address it right away. So I love this lesson, and controlling our reactions, those are the things that we can't get back. Those are the words, those are the bells that we can't unring when you say something quickly.
Yeah, and it's an art and a science, right? So we have an expectation that we owe a response to someone. So then the art becomes, at what time do we respond? So the one thing that I would say that is very helpful, and this is something that was shared with me through my mentoring with people mentoring with me, and that is, anytime that you're going to respond with an overt negative reaction, pause. Like, it's just really it. Like, if you're going to be hot on the moment, if you're really going to be intense about it, then you really want to pause and hold back. I've even been taught sometimes write an email without the name in the to line, so that you can read what it is that you are saying, process all of that frustration out of your brain, get it out someplace where it can exist. And then you can look at it and maybe read it and realize, oh my gosh, how ridiculous I was and what I thought I was saying, and how much I wasn't taking care of someone else. And gosh, I was blaming them for something that could very well have been my issue, not just necessarily their issue. So there are some techniques that can be.
I use the writing. I posted recently a screenshot of my inbox, and it has like 15,000 draft emails. Actually, a lot of my draft emails are replies that I want to send that I don't send. Now I should probably delete them and all that kind of stuff, but I think owning that breath, and I legit, some of the recommendations, take the 10 seconds and breathe through. And it's amazing how that 10-second breath work changes your mindset and gives you the wherewithal to say, well, maybe I didn't do this. Maybe you checked, oh my gosh, that email didn't go out. This actually just happened recently. I thought I'd send out something for my internal team to process. I realized I sent the email to myself because our names start with the same first letter.
There we go.
Yeah.
So Joe, let's turn it back to you, and let's further unpack a little bit more of your Uh-Oh experience. So you had this experience where you had an opportunity to respond, but you didn't because of really basically after hours. So it kind of saved you sort of in expense. What do you think your Uh-Oh would have cost you had it have been regular working hours when you got that message?
Yeah, I think it would have cost some of that social credit that I have with this person. And again, I've got a fantastic working relationship with this person. And again, their intention on, the more I think about it too, they were sending it when it was in their mind, and when they had an opportunity. It wasn't necessarily that they were expecting a response at that time, and it wasn't necessarily their intention to be accusatory. So I think that I could have really harmed that because of how I received it as opposed to how they sent it over.
Well, there's the cost of that piece of the reply, but there's also reflecting in the cost of your communication with the client and not getting the business. What was the actual impact of your lack of communication to the client?
Yeah, well, that's the tough thing, is like we were communicating with the customer. It was more of it was performance based. It wasn't necessarily something that was within our control in that situation. We followed all the steps, all of the service level agreements, SLAs were all in place, and the the key performance indicators all were okay. Unfortunately, we just lost in this situation, which
Gotcha.
sometimes that just happens. And again, I think as as folks that are super competitive, like you don't want that to happen ever, but this was one of those cases where it did. And I also think that contributed to, my initial reaction to it, because nobody likes to lose.
Yep.
So from that standpoint, like we didn't lose anything from the customer side other than the business in this case. But thankfully, like we have a great relationship outside of that. And they're cyclical. They come and go within certain markets where you have challenges.
The other piece of this is the internal person, stakeholder, sent you this email after hours. You said it was after hours. What are the reasons you chose to read this after hours?
Yeah. Again, I'll for those that can't see it, I'll lift my phone up in the air and just say it's because it was there. And I think I was just walking by my phone and double check to see if something was there, and guilty as charged. But thankfully I did put it down, wait, and think about it until the following morning. And I picked it up to make a phone call as opposed to picking it up to hammer on the keys and send an email.
Good.
Yeah, and that's really good too. So I want to chat about that. What was it in your brain that triggered the opportunity to pick up the phone and talk to the person, as opposed to you just responding and writing?
Yeah, these challenges are complex. As I said, there's a lot of different people that are involved in it, and sometimes it's multi-market. So there's a lot of different things that could be occurring. In addition to that, this person that I was talking to oversees another location where we had a challenge, and that was going just fine. So my decision was to make sure that I could explain the entire landscape of what we saw, not just putting it all in an email, because sometimes, as we know, sometimes emails can get a little long. And if there's nuances to it that don't necessarily show up on paper the same way, it's nice just to be able to pick up the phone. And the other piece of it was, right off the bat, when I picked up the phone, I wanted to make sure that they understood that I messed up. I missed the mark, and I wanted them to know that.
And taking accountability and responsibility for something, and the tone, that's the other thing that you said that's really helpful in a situation like this, where it's really complex and it's dynamic and there's a lot of emotions. And if your tone is really being, caring, especially after you've, thought it through and figured out what you want to do, I think that it is important to go old school, pick up the phone and call people. That if we think about what technology is doing for us, email is supposed to be for quick communications. Obviously texting is for much faster communications. But I think that if we're explaining a process or we're giving some instructions, I think email works really well. Maybe you're adding to a little instruction to a project or something. So the conversation's already been going. But I think we underestimate the value of the dynamics of conversation sometimes, and we don't do as much voice to voice or person to person connection that we really need to do. So the idea for technology, it's supposed to make our humanness, it's supposed to give us more time for our humanness. It's not supposed to take away or substitute that. And realistically, so I do appreciate the fact that you set up a standard of saying, look, I want people to know that I didn't do what I thought I was doing. I didn't do it well, and I'm going to take accountability for it. And there's a lot to explain. So I want them to be able to have interaction where they can ask me clarifying questions, and I can get this all resolved in one time, as opposed to sending back emails back and forth over a period of time. I mean, if we just refer back to the previous conversation that Ben had, I'm not saying he wouldn't purposefully respond, but what if in this conversation he really wanted to think about it? Well, that other person was like, no, I really need an answer now. I really want to hear more now, because in their mind, they want justification for whatever it is that didn't happen along the way. So I think it is really important to understand the nature of your communication, and also think about not only how you want to respond, but think of how other people want to hear that communication. So I think all of that's really great, and I appreciate you demonstrating that.
So what are some things you're going to do to prevent that type of thing from happening again?
Yeah, and I can tell you, I've already done it. It's again making sure that all the folks that are involved stay involved, and some of that is frequent updates to make sure that I'm addressing the entire team and that we're getting those feedback loops. In addition, we've set up meetings too, to make sure that we're all on the same page and have more of a consistent cadence with that stuff. So I will say, thankfully, like as I said, I've been doing this for a few years now, and we've had several of these. So this was, not something I'm not accustomed to, and I was fortunate enough that the person that I was working with during the conversation understood. They realized that it was just one of those situations where it happens, and we moved forward very quickly too. So very fortunate for that. But it's again constant communication and ensuring everybody's on the same page.
Don't you find it amazing that when you come clean with something, how people can really cut you a break on it? Unless, of course, your habit is to constantly screw up and then constantly take accountability. I think there may be a little difference in that. But in the general speaking of life, is that when we don't blame someone else, like you could have blamed anything. You could have blamed it on, and you could have even put that as part of your excuse. You could have said, oh, well, administrative support was supposed to send something out and they didn't do it. And you could blame someone else in the organization for something. But we really find that really true, effective leaders will take accountability and responsibility for things that happen, whether it's their own omission of doing it or whether it's the team. And I think that's an important step in distinguishing the difference between the effectiveness of leaders and how they will interact with others. So I really do appreciate how you've really put that up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times folks are afraid to admit when they're wrong in high stakes situations like that. It's uncomfortable to admit when not only that you missed something, but something didn't go as planned. And I know that can be challenging for people to deliver that bad news and to answer those questions that way, because you're afraid of the reaction of the other side. You're afraid of what that person's going to say. And, you could think worst case scenario, they're going to scream at me. And at the end of it, 9 times out of 10, that's not going to happen. But I will say something that somebody taught me at one point was, if you are half as kind to yourself as you are to other people, you'd be in a lot better place. And I think we forget that. Like, we get really hard on ourselves and we get really tough on those situations. Secondary. Like I was upset that I missed it, but then at the same time, then I had to share that news, and I had to share that we unfortunately lost in that situation. So it's twofold. The person wasn't involved in it, and then on top of it, the person was receiving, not great news that what was happening. So I think that's even another piece of it too, is give yourself a little bit of grace with those things, and both take the time and then also understand that most people are going to be understanding, even if we're upset.
Okay, that's great. So let's just recap a little bit of what we had. So you had a situation where you got some information. It was after hours. You chose to pause before you responded, figured out that you really realized that the request or the comment that was made that you didn't communicate was truly on you. You chose to pick up the phone and call the person based on the dynamics, based on the relationship, so that you could really smooth things over. Really great. Took accountability, responsibility for what you did. Really super. You put some processes in place to make sure that, maybe the communication piece doesn't happen again. But the communication piece wasn't the mistake. What was the was potentially your response. So the question now is, what are you putting in place to make sure that you don't have a negative reaction to something when it's 9 to 5?
Yeah, I think it is. It's taking that couple of deep breaths and not feeling that need to answer something that second. You want to make sure that
you know that. Okay, we know that you know that, but what are you going to do to put it in place? Like, what is it you have to reinvent your brain, or do you need a visual reminder? What is it that you need to make sure that you are going to follow what you already, because listen, before this, you already knew that was the right answer.
Right.
This is not a matter of you just, oh, wow, I just figured it out. You knew that was the right answer all along. So how do you get yourself to make sure that you now put that in place?
Sticky note on the screen says breathe.
Absolutely. Yeah, visuals are a great system that can be used to help individuals process information. And those visuals can be in sticky notes. Sometimes they can be inspirational messages that might be in artwork around their office space or their environment. It can be individuals just reminding themselves, maybe there's a routine of certain things, habits that they want to put in place. So they actually repeat those habits out loud to themselves and say, this is okay, when I get in my day to day, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be like this. This is how I'm going to be. And it really sets your brain up to perform because you've taken it from the subconscious, moved it to the conscious. Therefore, it's going to have maybe a little bit greater impact for you.
And I have a follow-up to that. So sticky note says breathe. Great. What are some other tools? And this is a mixed bag response on, are there things you can do on the phone that you would use that would not have you checking things after hours or whatnot? However, that night's sleep allowed you to have that response, but because you were willing to do that. So is it better then to not have the email or the messages come in after hours, or have that time to think? Because what if now you're distracted from the family things or whatever because of something bad that came in? You glance at your phone at 7:30 right before you're supposed to pay attention to a kid's recital or something. So do you use any of those digital boundary tools to help you with that? Is that a problem?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, sometimes it's, again, working across different time zones and things, it does happen, and part of that piece of it. I think that's just dependent on yourself. Like if you know that those things either could be in the pipeline or that's the way you may feel about those, I would just say make sure that you have ample time to look and think on whatever it is, whether it's time blocking and taking an hour in the morning to look through some of those things before you pick up the phone, maybe. Or making sure that like you're giving yourself that opportunity to look through. I think that would be part of it, but it's going to depend on the person. I think knowing how you react to things or how your day is going to operate would probably be the suggestion.
Okay, great. All right, Joe, this is really super stuff. So we do want to ask you, what was a question that you thought we might ask you that we didn't?
That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, well, I'd say you didn't ask how the person reacted once I shared, but I did share that through it. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'll tell you, I wasn't sure what questions were going to come. I was looking at it before, and I know I messaged you asking if there was any additional preparation beforehand. I was hoping to get a few more answers to the test before we jumped on.
Well, we kept it to the main questions, which is, explain your Uh-Oh, what did it cost you? What steps are you doing to fix it? How do you make sure you don't want to do that again? So we do that. But often for an interview, and so the individuals, a lot of the audience for this podcast are individuals who are working, who are dissatisfied with their current employer, maybe because they're not getting the training and development they need. They're being passed over for promotion with no plan for improvement. So the opportunity is for us to say, when you're going into an interview, you should always be thinking of a question that you believe that the interviewers are going to ask you. And then it's always good to have a backup question, just in case there is a time when someone says, so what would you like to ask me? And so just little activity. So we kind of put our guests on the spot, mainly because we know you and love you and you'll be fine with it. So we were just checking that out. But with that being said, Joe, thank you so much for being a part of the show and really giving us something really meaty to dive into, to really think about ourselves, our leadership, our communication. We know how important communication is in everything we do. So Ben and I like to end every one of our Cohesion Culture or our Cohesive Leader programs with this mantra. You don't have to know everything.
You just need to be teachable.